What to do, Ramley? We riding with the Rams today, and we are on Skiiup Bayless's head. You already know that fool is controversial as hell. He's always talking shit, and he's always trying to take up for the Cowboys. In an attempt to big up the GOAT, Tom Brady, and why he thinks the Rams are going to lose to Tampa Bay, he's going to make an attempt to throw shade at Stafford and act like Jared Goff is better than Matthew Stafford. Come on now, Skip. This got to be one of your worst arguments of all time.
Okay, my turn. Shannon Sharp at this moment has me on the run because of the loss of two initial players, AB and JPP. If you had told me 3-4 days ago that I would be without Antonio Brown and Jason Pierre-Paul, AB and JPP, my initial prediction would have been undercut. I wouldn't have been nearly as confident.
Well, here we go already. Foreshadowing Monday morning headlines, already setting you up for his built-in excuse of what we're going to say Monday if the Rams come out on top. Just like any other Rams game, when the Rams win, it's not going to be about the Rams. It's going to be about Tampa Bay. Oh no, what's wrong with Tampa Bay? What's wrong with Tom Brady and the Buccaneers? I'll tell you what happened. They didn't have AB, they didn't have JPP, and blah, 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 blah. That's just how it is, and that's how it is every single week.
But I, for one, on this show, have courage of my convictions. I am never flip skip.
Never skip flip. Okay, we'll see about that. I already had to put Colin Cowherd on blast. I'll do you next, Skiiup Bayless, because I know there's plenty of stuff out there for me to prove you wrong.
So I'm going to stand strong behind my man, Thomas Edward Patrick Brady Jr.
Exactly.
Because I got one thing and only one thing going for me on Sunday.
What's that?
I do not have Brady's favorite target. And I'm going to remind you, speaking of targets, when they did lose to the Rams last November at Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football, the most targets by far on the team in that game went to Antonio Brown. He had 13 targets in that game. Not going to be able to play because of COVID, right?
Yep.
JPP made the Pro Bowl last year, and it sounds almost certainly like he's not going to play in this game. I still don't believe in Matthew Stafford.
You will be. You will after the Sunday.
I admire him. I respect him. I honor him just the way Bruce Arians did. Remember the recent quotes from Bruce Arians? I'm going to read them real quick because they are staggering to me. Of Matt Stafford, Bruce Arians, the coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, said, he's one of my all-time favorite guys. He's tough as nails. He's one of the few quarterbacks I like going out and watching warm up just to watch him throw because he's so special, said Bruce Arians, who continued, always felt like he was extremely one of the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks in this league for a long time. His team loves him because they know he's going to suck it up for them, okay? Can you get much higher praise from a coach? And this is way before this game, so it's not a game week. I'm going to gush just to try to set them up for the kill.
Well, he said that even before they were playing him.
That's what I'm saying. He didn't even know when he said these things. He didn't even know. So I want that on the record about Matt Stafford.
Okay.
But now we look harder at who is Matt Stafford and what happened in Detroit.
Matt Stafford. Who is Matt Stafford? I don't know no Matt Stafford. Are you talking about Matthew Stafford? Come on, people. We got to get this man's name right. He wants to go by Matthew. He doesn't like Matt. At least give him Matt.
His record as a starter in Detroit, 74-90-1, okay? In 7 of those 9 seasons in Detroit, he had this guy nicknamed Megatron. Was he any good?
Yeah.
So 7 of the 9 years with Megatron, Matt Stafford made 1 Pro Bowl.
This is another big one. People love throwing Megatron in Matthew Stafford's face. They love doing that. But he's one guy. You have to have more than one guy. There's been plenty of teams that had a great wide receiver that never won a Super Bowl, won playoff games, or anything. That's Colin Cowherd. He's the one that says, oh, you got to build it from the inside out. Wide receivers are just icing. I mean, even Tom Brady, he had one run with Randy Moss. The rest of the teams that he had wide receiver cores that were more similar to what the Rams have now than what New England had with Randy Moss. I mean, we could go on with receivers that never won anything in this league. And there was a reason why Megatron quit. He didn't quit because Matthew Stafford sucked. He quit because him and Matthew Stafford alone weren't going to be enough, and they wouldn't let him leave to go play for another team.
He went 0-3 in the postseason, and 2 of the games were not even close. The one at New Orleans, I don't know if you remember that one. That was when Drew Brees was riding high back in 2011.
Right. That was when Brees at his apex.
They got shelled. It was 45-28. But Megatron in that game at Superdome caught 12 balls for 211 yards and 2 touchdowns. And they still got blown out.
Okay, did you not just hear yourself? You just said the score was 45-28 at the Superdome. A loud stadium. Matthew Stafford put up 28 points, but his defense gave up 45. That's not on Matthew. That's on the defense.
Then they played pretty well at Dallas against just a pretty good Dallas team. And
when they got robbed,
they got robbed because a pass interference on Hitchens, now a Chief obviously, got overturned, and I still don't know why it got overturned, but they picked up the flag, and it saved the day for my Cowboys, who then went on to Green Bay, and they got robbed at Green Bay.
No.
So maybe it was karma.
One robbery
what goes
deserves
around, came back around, and we got robbed because Dez caught it. We all know he caught it.
Robbed is exactly right. That's what happened. He got robbed because, honestly, that should have been Matthew Stafford's first playoff win. So he should be 1-2. That's what it should be. And that was karma for the Cowboys because Dez Bryant did catch that ball. But they took it away from him just like the officials took Matthew Stafford's playoff win in Dallas on the road.
Mug a man down the street and then somebody mug you, how you gonna call the cops? Because you did the exact same thing, so you shouldn't be upset.
That's what happened. You just nailed it. 2016 was his final playoff appearance, Matt Stafford in Detroit. He lost 26-6 at Seattle, and he wasn't very good. He barely threw for 200 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions.
Ooh, that's a tall task now. Not very many people went into Seattle against the 12s in that Legion of Boom defense and were very successful. Even if you are a great quarterback trying to carry a lousy-ass franchise.
That's his resume in Detroit. For all of his arm talent, for all of his toughness, I didn't see the intangibles that lifted him up above and into even the top 10 of quarterbacks.
But if you go back and you look at any team's playoff runs, Super Bowl runs, do you know what they're all going to have throughout the season? They're going to have defenses making plays to spark the team. They're going to have special teams coming up huge to swing the tides and flip momentum. It's not all about one guy. Did he have those things happen to help him? Because even the great Tom Brady has had that happen for him. You're about to bring up Jared Goff. You could argue he was carried by a good defense, especially last year. Where was Matthew Stafford's helping? We already said Calvin Johnson's not enough. You need more.
For my eye test, obviously I'm locked into my Dallas Cowboys. And I'll remind Cowboy Nation of a couple of games that Matt Stafford played in his hometown of Dallas, Texas, where he went to Highland Park High School. 2011 at Dallas, they trailed 27-3 in the third quarter. At which point, my man Tony Romo suddenly threw 2 pick sixes in the third quarter. One to the best man in his wedding, Bobby Carpenter. Made me wonder, did you throw him a present or something? Because it was 27-3.
Oh, looky there. A defensive player made a play to help a Matthew Stafford-led team gain momentum and turn things around in a game. And now you're about to point out those intangibles that you said he was lacking, that you said you saw firsthand.
All of a sudden, I actually went to the restroom at that point and came back in, and it was 27-10. I said, what did I miss? They came back in the game, and here came Matt Stafford, and all of a sudden, they pulled it out. They came all the way back to win 34-30.
Right.
Okay, so he was tremendous that day.
Yes.
He was even better in 2013 in Detroit when he threw Calvin Johnson.
He almost broke the record.
329 yards worth of footballs.
Yeah.
Yes, Megatron was huge. Great receivers can help you win a game here and there, but you can't just depend on one guy to throw the ball to for a playoff run or a Super Bowl run. You've got to have more than just him.
That's 2 games for any receiver.
Any receiver, it's 2 games, and Flipper Anderson still has the record at 3-3-6, which I still find staggering.
Oh, for the kids that are watching, Flipper Anderson, he was a Rams legend, and he does hold that record for receiving yards in a game.
I think that was a Sunday night game against the Saints.
It was unbelievable. Okay, so my eye test told me in those 2 games, Matt Stafford was all world.
Right.
But he only made 1 Pro Bowl.
Right.
And the harder I look at his resume, this is the God's truth. I looked at this harder and harder last night, and I said, seriously, is he better than Jared Goff? Because I don't think he is.
Oh, well, here we go. Back to the Jared Goff stuff. I don't blame you. I feel bad every time I have to bring up Jared Goff, so of course, we know y'all gonna bring him up too. At this point, it's not an argument whether or not Matthew Stafford is better than Jared Goff. At this point, you're just talking out your ass and saying shit just to say shit. Just to try to make an argument. I mean, did you not see what Jared Goff did against the Packers as soon as it started raining? His tiny hands, as Nick Wright likes to say, Mr. Tiny Hands. He couldn't grip the football, he fumbled. And of course, he's not going to bring that Lions team back without the assistance of McVay to guide him along against that Packers team. It just ain't going to work in Lambeau Field like that. But you got more for me about Jared Goff. I'm here for it. What you got?
Okay, well, look at what Jared Goff did. Look at his resume versus Matt Stafford's resume, albeit dysfunctional Detroit. We know Barry Sanders quit and walked away on Detroit.
Megatron
he quit and walked away.
away.
Okay, I got it. But Matt Stafford was not able to rise above that franchise and lift them into contention. He never did that.
Okay, but when you're going to go start making all these comparisons, you got to make them make sense, because Jared Goff was not carrying an inept organization when he played for the Rams. A great organization was carrying him. Yes, he had to make plays, and we acknowledge that, and we applaud him for that. But he didn't carry the Rams. And until Jared Goff carries the Lions to at least a playoff win, or shoot, hell, if he can even carry the Lions to the playoffs, I'll give you this a little bit. But it's still early. But I doubt Jared Goff is going to take the Lions to the playoffs.
Jared Goff, think of the great game. I'm not, and I'll toss that word around loosely. He played some great games. It started back in 2017 against my Cowboys at Dallas. Do you remember that game?
Oh yeah, when
they
came
won
from
35-30, and he was sensational in that game. I mean, he looked like Matt Stafford according to Bruce Arians in that game. And then how about the game on Monday Night Football that we talked about for 2 weeks on this show?
With Mahomes?
He outdueled Patrick Mahomes 54-51. He threw for 413 and 4 touchdowns in that game on November 19th of 2018.
Right.
Does that count?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, was that great?
Yes, you're right. Jared Goff did all of that. But if you remember, you and the rest of the talking heads weren't buying into Jared Goff. Y'all kept giving all the praise to McVay while we were trying to take up for him. And then once the NFL figured out McVay's offense, how McVay stayed in Jared Goff's headset up until 15 seconds to tell him what to do, everybody in the media doubted Jared Goff and said he was a phony, and it was all McVay. The NFL done figured out Sean McVay, and now it's Sean McVay that's the problem. Sure, maybe the NFL might have caught up with Sean McVay a little bit, and they figured out the communications that Sean McVay and Jared Goff had, and they figured out what Jared Goff's limitations were, and they figured out what Jared Goff's weaknesses were, and that's what defenses started to exploit. And Jared Goff couldn't figure out how to overcome any of that. That's why he kept getting worse.
And then how about what he did at the end of that season against my Cowboys at the Coliseum? It was 30-22. He didn't have a big passing day, but do you remember 3rd and 7 at the 28 with 2 minutes left, and they are in trouble because Dak's coming back? Dak had heated back up, and all of a sudden he runs the bootleg that Sean McVay, it's the staple of his offense, and he bootlegs and he bootlegs and he keeps booting and booting and he just keeps running and ran 11 yards for the first.
And also in that game, if you remember, C.J. Anderson and Todd Gurley ran all over your defense. And if you go back and look at how you were making excuses for the Cowboys after that game, and how you were saying that they got cheated, and how they should have won that game because they called Dak Prescott in the grasp when you knew for sure he was about to lead the Cowboys to a game-winning score. I've had a excellent effort out of the running game on that day. And as Rams fans, yes, we were happy to see him make the few plays he needed to against the Cowboys.
I think the biggest difference between Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff is that basically you have to diagram the perfect play for Jared Goff in order for it to be successful, and that's not the case for Matthew Stafford. You can get off script. See, if I just need Stafford to make a play, buy time and make a play, he can do that. And Sean McVay was not so sure after seeing what he saw, mistake after mistake, and it's the same mistakes. That's what irritates coaches, Skip. It's the same mistake. Jared, take care of the ball. Jared, don't turn it over here.
Bingo. Shannon Sharp hit it right on the head. That's exactly what the problem was. Everybody's been saying this ever since the Rams extended Jared Goff. All the talking heads kept telling us, what are the Rams thinking? Jared Goff is not a franchise quarterback. Why are they giving him all this money? Now the Rams get off of him, it's like, oh, why did they get rid of Jared Goff? Jared Goff was just fine. He played so well. Now you need to make up your minds. And to add to what Shannon Sharp was saying, Jared Goff only had to make a play here or there when he needed to because the rest of the team was doing their part. The defense wasn't letting games get out of hand. The defense was keeping games close. The running game was giving Jared Goff the opportunity to run play action. Matthew Stafford was always playing from behind in Detroit. Jared Goff was always playing with a lead. That's why Sean McVay is 39-0 when leading at halftime. I don't think Stafford had 39 games in a 4-year span where his team was leading at halftime. I could be wrong. I ain't checked the stats on that, but he was playing for a team that was always playing from behind. He didn't have defenses keeping him in games. He didn't have running games to lean on to help set up the play action. It's a apples to oranges comparison from Jared Goff's time with the Rams to what Matthew Stafford had to overcome in Detroit. There's about to be an equal comparison when you see what Stafford does as a Ram compared to what Jared Goff did as a Ram, and when you see what Jared Goff's about to do as a Lion compared to what Matthew Stafford did as a Lion. That's when you can compare the two and what they've done with their respective organizations.
That same team, led by Jared Goff, went to New Orleans for the NFC Championship game, and there was an obviously outrageously controversial call at the end of regulation?
Yes.
Yes, but it goes overtime, and Jared Goff out-dueled Drew Brees at Drew Brees in that game to get them to the Super Bowl. His QBR was 68, Drew's was 55 in that game. I'm just saying he did that.
Okay, so now that we have a narrative that we're trying to run, now we can give Jared Goff credit for winning the NFC Championship game in New Orleans. In that hostile environment. Nobody wanted to give him credit back then. Everybody wanted to say the Saints were robbed and the Rams didn't belong in that Super Bowl. That was supposed to be the Saints going to the Super Bowl to play against Tom Brady and the Patriots.
But that kid, number 9, and I call him a kid because he's significantly younger than I am, Skip, he's special now. And I don't believe, with the exception of Jim Caldwell, that he had the best head coach and the best coaching in Detroit.
All right, you could argue that. But I'm going to finish on Jared Goff. He at least got them to the Super Bowl.
Yes, he
and
did.
then last year, he led them up to Seattle. They went 10-6 during the regular season, and they beat Seattle at Seattle. He didn't put up big numbers in that game, but he was the winning quarterback in that game.
Again, when the Rams went up to Seattle and beat the 12s, the defense was carrying that team. It almost didn't matter who our quarterback was. Like, the Rams opted to go with John Wolford at quarterback. He got hurt. Came out the game. And yes, Jared Goff went and finished the deal with his little 9 fingers. But because of his performance against, the 49ers twice, the Jets, the Dolphins, those games were unacceptable. That he's going the wrong way. So obviously it's time to make a move at this point.
Okay, so my jury is way out on whether Matt Stafford has better intangibles, big game intangibles, than Jared Goff did, because every time it was a big game, he played pretty to very well. Maybe over the long haul, he's not good enough in Sean McVay's mind to go win the Super Bowl, right?
I tell you what you're about to find out.
Okay.
How good his intangibles are and whether or not he can win the
guess
big
what?
game.
This is very arguably the biggest game of Matt Stafford's career, because he's never going to have felt the kind of focus and spotlight and pressure. This is it. This is a preview, very potentially, of the NFC Championship game. This is very possible a Super Bowl predictor, as in win the Super Bowl, because whoever wins this game could be in the catbird seat to go right on and win the Super Bowl. Am I right about that?
I agree.
You are absolutely right. This is a big game. This is like an NFC Championship game preview. And that's exactly why the Rams brought Matthew here. And Matthew even said it himself. He wanted a chance to play in games like this. And this is his chance. So, of course, the pressure's on because everybody's talking about it. Matthew is up to the challenge. He wanted this. And you're going to see. I think we're all going to see what Matthew Stafford's really working with.
I will say this. I'm going to give you credit for this. Tom Brady, in his remarks yesterday about this game, was as effusive as I have ever heard him about an opponent. And I don't think it was just pregame hocus pocus. I don't think he was trying to set up the Rams for the kill here. I think he knows that this defense is his kryptonite because they did a number on him. He barely threw for 216 in the game on Monday night back at Tampa, and he had a long, hard night. And obviously, it was a little different personnel, still Aaron Donald, and a different coordinator, Wade Phillips, in the Super Bowl. But Tom had a long, hard afternoon in that game, didn't he?
Yes.
Okay, so he went off yesterday about this is as challenging as it's getting for him, as ever been for him, because they do such a good job of disguising coverages, but they also have a great pass rush. So he says you really can't pick up on anything pre-snap because they're holding disguises, and at the same time they have a pass rush that gets home really quickly. Okay, and then he compliments all the DBs because they disguise, but they keep eye on quarterback, so they can break on the ball quicker than other units that he's up against. So he raved about them, and you can say you always discount everything Brady says like it's all calculated or just completely sanitized for the sake of building up to the game.
Tom Brady knows that the Rams defense is the best defense that he has gone up against in the past couple years. He was struggling last year. The Tampa Bay was struggling last year prior to their bye. They lost to the Rams and they lost to the Chiefs. They had their bye, and then they started beating on a bunch of weak teams like the Falcons, the Lions, just teams like that. Nobody with good defense. And then when they got to the Super Bowl, they beat a Chiefs team that does not have a very strong defense. And their offensive line was missing all its starters. So the defensive line for Tampa Bay was able to pin their ears back.
The thing is, he feels very comfortable with the unit that he's taking in there, but he understands what the Rams. Anytime you have an Aaron Donald, who's a top 5 player in football, you have a Jalen Ramsey, in many regards the best defensive back, who can take away your best receiver, and now we can zone it off everywhere else, and he can take your best guy and take your man. They have pieces, Skip, that can cause problems, and they have an offense that can score points.
Well, look, y'all, it's getting late. It done got dark on me. As y'all can tell, you can barely see me. But Skiiup Bayless, I had to get on you for this one. I had to tap in and tag in with my boy Shannon Sharp. He always whooping your ass, Skip. At the end of the day, you gotta get over it, man. You gotta stop trying to make arguments just to have something to disagree with Shannon for. Because there's no way in your mind that you believe Jared Goff is just as good as Matthew Stafford. Sure, maybe Jared Goff might have the Lions looking somewhat competitive. He's taking a lot of what he learned from Sean McVay and he's using it. And that's what we want to see him do. But Sean McVay can't hold his hand anymore. He doesn't have to hold Stafford's hand. Matthew Stafford's his own man. He can go out there and take accountability and hold his own. He can see what's going on. He can read the defense. He can get us out of bad positions. He can correct bad calls by Sean McVay. Because, yes, Sean McVay makes a lot of dumb play calls. Like when you go back to the Colts game and it was 3rd down and whatever, and we do a little in and around to Cooper Kupp. That was a horrible call, Coach. Come on. Other times, it's not about correcting a bad call. It's just about seeing what the defense is presenting you, make an adjustment on the fly pre-snap, and then when things start to break down after the snap, be able to go through your progressions, work within that pocket. If your guy isn't open, check it down to somebody else, or at least put the ball in a position to where your guy can make a play on it. Goff wasn't doing all that. But look, HD Walrus, holla at your boy. And I appreciate y'all for riding with me. Y'all have a good night. Peace.